Alright guys, what is up? This is Brian, and I'm going to try to make this a quick video, but what I wanted to do, I'm actually redoing this video. I put this video out on Monday, but I'm redoing it because I was pretty irritated about the way that the video turned out. There was a lot of ums and ahs and and all kinds of other junk. Plus I couldn't speak out very loud. I was trying to do the video at home while the kids were asleep, and it just didn't work out. But anyway, this is going to be, I'm going to try my best to do pretty much the exact same video that I did before. And what I want to do is elaborate on something that I did the other day on Facebook. And I put a verse out on Facebook, and it's Proverbs 30-4. And I'm going to read that verse for you, and I'm going to read and go over some of my posts that I put on Facebook concerning this particular verse, or what I want to elaborate or talk about with this verse. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some Hebrew, show you some Hebrew, and go from there. Plus I also have a couple of websites that I'm going to show you some content that I think fits in with this really well. So let's start off. I'm going to read from the ISV. This is eSword, and this is going to be Proverbs 30 verse 4. Who has ascended to heaven and then descended? Who has collected the wind in his hands? Who has wrapped up the waters in a garment? Who has established all the farthest points of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name? Surely you know. Now, I don't think it's a mystery who's being spoken about here. When we read these qualifying verses, I guess that's a way to put it. When we read these sentences, or these questions up here, who has ascended to heaven and then descended? Who has collected the wind in his hands? Who has wrapped up the waters in a garment? Who has established all the farthest points of the earth? I think it's clear that we have to be talking about God. We cannot be talking about any man. It has to be God. What I want to focus on here is this little phrase, what is his name and what is his son's name? Again, this is the Old Testament, and what I want to point out to you as far as what I'm talking about with this being the Old Testament is that this is fairly clear that this is God. We're talking about God, but it asks what is his son's name. And if you'll recall from the New Testament, from the Gospels, Jesus claimed to be the Son of God. In John 8, Yeshua says, he quotes himself to God when he says, before Abraham was, I am. And the Jews and the Pharisees, they picked up on that, and they saw it as blasphemy. So they wanted to kill Jesus because of that type of a statement. But what I always used to focus on with this is that how is it that the Jews refused to see this? Because they didn't believe that God could have a son, from my understanding. When they saw the Messiah, they didn't believe that the Messiah would be the Son of God. They believed that the Messiah, or in Hebrew the Mashiach, would just be a man that would be, obviously blessed or anointed to do God's will. But we're going to focus on not only what is his son's name, but we're going to focus on the first part of this as well, because I used to look right over this. It's like, what is his name? Well, that's who we know him as. He's God. But I want to suggest to you that that's not God's name. That is what he is. And I'm going to read this little part that I put on Facebook back on the 17th, and it's pretty short, but I'm going to try to elaborate a little here and there. Do we even know his name? And I'm talking about who we all like to refer as just God. I suggest it isn't God, nor is it what the King James replaced it with. They replaced it with Lord. And you'll see that right here. See how it's in all caps. I know this isn't the King James, but King James is not the only version that does this. This Lord in all caps here is just a title as well. In fact, his name, which we're going to talk about here in a few, his name has been replaced in our scriptures over 6,000 times. Does our scriptures not tell us to call out on his name? My question is, how are we to call out on his name if we don't know what that is? Instead, it's been replaced with Lord, which is, in Hebrew, it's Adonai. I'm going to show that to you real quick. Adonai, I've been taking a little bit of Hebrew. I'm trying to learn Hebrew. So Adonai is Aleph, Dalet, Holam, Nun, Yod. And Hebrew is read from right to left. So this is Adonai. Adonai is what we see in scriptures. In fact, in Jewish blessings, they will speak Baruch atah Adonai. But when you read it, it does not have this in here. Instead, it will have the actual name of God, what I believe to be the name of God. But instead of trying to pronounce the name of God, they will replace it with this word, and this word just is translated Adonai. Okay, why is it then that the Bible tells us to call out on his name and asks if we know it? In Proverbs, it says, what is his name? And then it says, surely you know. Why is it that the Bible asks us to call out his name? The Bible and the Torah have no such law against speaking the name of God. And I want to touch a little bit on this. The Jews absolutely will not say the name of God, or they won't even write it. In fact, when they... wow. Let's go back to full screen here. 100. Thank you. Oh. Okay, when they're writing the name of God, they will do this number. And they will skip a letter, and they'll leave it like that. And the reason being is, if something were to happen while they were writing it, and say they only got the G and the O written down, if they were to die in the middle of the word, they won't have profaned the name of God. In fact, something else that they call God, they call him Hashem, which means the name. Another word that I've noticed where they won't spell it correctly is the word Eloheinu. And Eloheinu means our God in Hebrew. And I believe this is how Eloheinu is. Wow, that's a big nun. This is supposed to be a nun. This is Eloheinu. Instead, they would write it something along these lines. I think this is the way I've seen it. It would be I think it's Elokeinu, or something along those lines. And so the point is that they would either purposely leave a letter out, or they would purposely change a letter of a name of God in order to keep themselves from possibility of profaning his name. Okay, so what is his name, though? The Bible and the Torah have no such law against saying his name. In fact, like I said over and over again, the Bible talks about speaking and saying his name. In fact, again, it's asking us what is his name. So let's look at it. What is his name? Well, the name is sometimes referred to as the Tetragrammaton. And what it is, it's 4 Hebrew letters. And it's Yod, He, Vav, and He. And from this, we get the name Yahweh, we get Jehovah. The variant from that, Yehovah or Yehovah, and I've even seen Yahweh. And the reason for these different variations is what you're seeing right here in these 4 letters. These are all considered consonants. In Hebrew, vowels are dots that you would find under, above. This is a vowel marking, that's a vowel marking, and you can have several different variations of all of these different things. These are supposed to be in a diagonal. You've got 1 dot, you've got 2 dots under one particular letter, and so on. These are the vowels, and because you don't see them in here, there are no vowels in this. And Hebrew, when it was originally written in the Bible, there was no vowels. They've been added, I couldn't tell you when, but relatively recently, to aid in teaching Hebrew and things like that. So that's why you have all the different variations. This is Yod, or Yud in some cases, and this is the Y sound. That's why you have Yahweh, Yahweh, Yehovah. The reason you have J, Jehovah, is Jesus' name, Yeshua, also is with a Y, and when it was translated from Hebrew into Greek, it changed into like i.e. Jesus. But anyway, this letter right here is a Vav in the dialect that I'm learning. In other dialects, it's pronounced as like wall. I believe that's how you pronounce it, a wah. It's a W sound. And also, I want to show you this as well. You take the Vav, and if you put a dot over it, it makes the O sound. So it becomes a vowel when it has the dot over. If the Vav has a dot to this side right here, it becomes a U sound. So it becomes a vowel in that sense as well. So you've got the O and the U, and that's why you have things like Yahweh, and that's why you see Jehovah right here. And in this particular case, where some dialects say it's a wall, that's why you have Yahweh. So anyway, that just gives you a little bit of a understanding of what all is going on in this particular case. But at any rate, his name is this right here, and I say Yahweh. But what the Bible does, or the King James, is every time it sees this, it replaces it with this in all caps, which, like I told you before, in Hebrew is really Adonai. And boy, I just cannot get my noons right. So why is that? You know, there's no attempt to translate this, and I believe it all has to do with the Jewish, belief or understanding, and not saying that. It's supposedly out of respect, but I believe that in that we're not able to do that, to call out on his name like it says. And I want to show you something else since we're talking about this. I think, okay, this is in Exodus. And this is the part where God is talking to Moses. And Moses says, when I go to the Israelis and tell them the God of your ancestors sent me to you, and I'm reading in verse 13, then they'll say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God says, I am who I am. And then he said, tell the Israelis, I am sent me to you. And then he says, God also told Moses, tell the Israelis, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I am to be remembered from generation to generation. All right, now look at this. It says, this is my name. Do you see his name anywhere? Well, if you remember what I told you, all caps. In effect, God told Moses, tell the Israelis, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, or Jehovah, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. See, God is not his name. He wasn't sitting here telling you, my name is the Lord, because the Lord is also tied to Baal or Baal. God is also tied to false gods. He was saying, I am the God of your ancestors. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But he said, this is my name forever, and unless you know the Hebrew, can read the Hebrew, or you know the reasoning behind this and what it is, you'll miss it. He says, this is my name. And let me bring it over here. I'm going to put in the King James Plus, which has Strong's numbers. And here we go, Lord. And in this particular instance, it has Yehovah. And there it is, Yod, He, Vav, He. So, again, it's there, but for some reason or another in English, it's always replaced with the all caps Lord. And I think we're missing something if we completely get away from that altogether. But it's Yod He Vav He. It is where Yahweh, Yehovah, Yahweh, and Jehovah have come from. It may also interest you that our Savior was not given the name Jesus at birth. Jesus was not the name the angel told Joseph and Mary to name him. His name was Yehoshua or Yeshua, and it has a meaning. Names are not just titles or words given to us that we will continually be known as, that we'll answer to the rest of our life. Names in the Bible have a meaning, and they are descriptive. And in this case, Yeshua, which is Jesus' name in Hebrew, it is referring to, it's stemming from the word for salvation. And again, this is a point that we miss completely if we only use and know the English of his name. And what I want to do here is I'm going to show you a couple of different things. And these are on the internet, and I found them through, I believe I found them through the classes that I took through Chuck Missler, through Koinonia Institute. But let me come over here to John, and again we're going to be in the ISV, the International Standard Version. And it says, Pilate wrote an inscription, verse 19, and put it on the cross. It read, Jesus from Nazareth, the King of the Jews. And many Jews read this inscription because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city. It was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. Then the Jewish high priest told Pilate, don't write the King of the Jews, but that this fellow said, I am the King of the Jews. But Pilate said, what I have written, I have written. What I want you to look at here is something that we're not going to pick up because we don't speak or understand Hebrew. And I want to look at what this says in Hebrew, what the sign that says Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews, what that says in Hebrew. But what I want you to understand too, when I was taking these classes with Chuck Missler, he was quick to point out that when the high priests or the Pharisees pitched a fit, it was generally because there was, well, I guess let me rephrase it this way. When they pitched a fit, that is a place that we need to dig, because there is going to be something going on that more than likely we're gonna miss on because we don't understand Hebrew culture, the language. So anyway, in this particular instance, let's take a look at what's going on. And I have this web page. I'm going to pull it up. It's talking about Jesus's epitaph. And we're talking about the sign that's above Jesus's head. And again, this is one that Pilate wrote, and he said, what I have written, I have written. Well, he wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. What is that in Hebrew? Well, right here we see Yeshua. This is the name of Jesus in Hebrew. And these things right here are what I was talking about before. These are all the vowel markings. So this says Yeshua HaNazarai, V'melech HaYehudim. And what that means is Yeshua, Jesus, the Nazarene, and King, and of is implied here. HaYehudim, which means the Jews. And if you look at it right here, this is what I want to pay attention to. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. And that's exactly what I was telling you is the name of God, Yahweh. And the Jews, I believe, this is what they picked up on, and this is what they were spazzing out about. The reason that they wanted him to write something different is because they saw that this was happening. And this was, I don't know of another way to say it, this was a sign for them. This was something that they immediately picked up on, and they were like, you need to change this. And I believe that Pilate knew what he was doing. But I want you to notice this pattern. It's an acrostic, I believe, is the term for it. Yeah, translation acrostic, made up of the first letter of each word. It spells out Yahweh, or Yod Hey, and this is where, again, we get the different dialects or whatever of Hebrew. They've got the W here for Baal, but it spells out Yahweh. And I'm going to show you another instance here that is fairly recent of another acrostic that is spelling out another name. And let me give you a little heads up about this particular rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, and I don't know much about him. I know that he did a prophecy before he died that has come up in the news pretty recently, I guess in at least his Israeli news. But he prophesied something concerning Ariel Sharon. I believe it's Ariel Sharon, that when Ariel Sharon died, after that is when the Messiah would come. Well, Ariel Sharon died recently, so that's coming back in the news. But what he's probably most famous for, he was a very well-respected rabbi. Before he died, he claimed to have met the Messiah in a dream. And Messiah in Hebrew is Mashiach. He claimed to have met Mashiach in a dream or something to that extent. But he said he knew who he was. And before he died, he wrote on a note, he wrote concerning the name of the Messiah. And he sealed this envelope that had his note in it. And he wrote on the envelope not to open the envelope for a year after his death. And a year after his death, they wrote it, or excuse me, they opened it and read it. And I'm going to show you the note here in just a second. But the contents of the note were so, I guess, controversial that his 80-year-old son, so the rabbi was, I think he was in his hundreds, the 80-year-old son, who was also a rabbi, said it was a forgery. He was trying to distance his family and his father as far away from the note as possible because of the contents of the note. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at the note. And this is him. This is Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, and this is the note right here. And again, it's in Hebrew, and it's difficult to for me. I know the alphabet, and it's difficult for me to make out some of these because handwriting is so much different than the script that you see right here. But I do pick out this. This is Mashiach in Hebrew. And so let's look at this right here. This first letter, and this is, again, going on acrostic. First letter is Yod. Second, Hey. This is a Vav, Shin, Vav, and then an Ayin. And I'm going to take you to this other website, and we're going to talk about what all that means. But the note says, concerning the letter abbreviation of the Messiah's name, he will lift the people and prove that his word and law are valid. That's what the note says. So, for us as English readers and speakers, we don't pick up anything in particular from what he's saying here. But when you read it in Hebrew, you see Yarim Ha'am, and boy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce all this stuff, but we see Yod, He, Vav, Shin, Vav, and Ayin is unspoken. It's not pronounced in this day and age. It had a guttural type tone back in the day, but the reason it has O is because what it's doing is it's taking on the sound of the next letter. So that's why they put O and not the Ayin sound. And what that spells is, and you can see right here, the initial spell the Hebrew name of Jesus, and there it is, Yehoshua. Yehoshua and Yeshua are effectively the same name, derived from the same Hebrew root of the word salvation, as documented in these particular two verses. One is Zechariah and one in Ezra. And I want to show you, this is an Israeli website. So they picked up on it. And what I wanted to tell you as well, because when they read this, the son was so offended, basically, about what it said, that he was he's trying to distance himself and his father away from this. He was claiming that it was a forgery, several different things that they came up with. But what I'm trying to tell you is that this is something that they knew of because of this. I believe that they were looking at the acrostic, and as soon as they saw this note, they immediately knew what he was saying. He was like, okay, he's saying it's Jesus, it's Yeshua, and that's why they're so upset. That's why they're so up in arms about it. But that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about, and what I wanted to show you. And I know it's not much, and I've probably made a good 20 minutes out of this not much, if not more. But I wanted to say one last thing in closing here. Looking at what he says here concerning the letter abbreviation of the Messiah's name. And that may have been letting them know, hey, look, you need to look at the code that I'm about to lay down in front of you here. But he says, he will lift the people and prove that his word and law are valid. Now, I want to, I guess, come straight out and say that here in the last year, I have made the conscious decision after studying and seeking and prayer, I have become a Torah following Christian. And I know some of you are either turning the video off at this point, some of you are shaking your head, and some of you don't have a clue what that means and whatever. For those of you who don't know what in the world I'm talking about, I'm telling you that the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, are commonly called the law. And I have made the decision that the law that God gave, or the instructions that God gave to Moses, are still ones that he has commanded his people to follow. And I believe that there is a blessing in store for those who follow his Torah. And there's there's a lot that I can go into about this. And I didn't make this decision lightly. In fact, I struggled and struggled and struggled with it initially. But what I want to talk to you about is that the Jews today, they do not believe that Yeshua or Jesus is the Messiah. And I believe that part of that is because of what the church, or how the church portrays Messiah or Yeshua, and what they believe that the New Testament teaches. And I believe that they believe, I believe they have this opinion because the church broadcasts it. And what I'm talking about is the Jews believe that Messiah, when he comes, will establish the Torah, or the first 5 books of Moses, also called the Pentateuch, and what the church likes to call the law. He will establish the Torah as the law of the land, more or less. I've heard that he will uphold it. He will define even the spaces between the letters. That's what they believe that Messiah will do. And this may not be exactly what you believe about the law, but I have been told that the law is legalism. I've been told that and this is all from the Christian church, I've been told that the law is bondage. I've been told that the law is slavery. We are taught that the law is done away with, that we are free from the law. And these are all things that I thought, and I knew in my heart to be true, because I studied it myself and I saw it in the scriptures. But maybe I can share all this in another video, but I don't feel the same way anymore. And I have heard of Jews who had come to Messiah, Jesus Christ, and they have told their testimony. And in their testimony, they'll talk about how they just stayed away from the New Testament. They stayed away from Jesus because they did not believe these things. But when they read, when they finally broke down and read the New Testament, they saw that this is Jews. These are Jews that are writing these books, these New Testament books. My point is that I'm afraid that our doctrine and the way that we portray our Messiah, the Messiah of Israel, we have pushed aside or caused a lot of Jews to refuse to even look at Yeshua as Messiah. And I'm not saying that to lay any blame. I'm just saying I believe that for years and years I've had it all wrong. But for the Old Testament to say over and over again that God is perfect, that His law is perfect, and that David spoke over and over again about how his law, he loves God's Torah, but we think that it's something done away with and cast aside, that it's a curse today. And I think that was a wrong way for me to look at it for so many years. I hope this was interesting. If nothing else, I'm sure you probably didn't learn anything that's earth-changing or anything like that from this, but I hope it was at least interesting. And if you're like me, then maybe it piqued your interest in learning the Hebrew language. I know that in my pursuit of the Hebrew language, the Bible has opened up to me, or at least the Old Testament has. Understanding the Hebrew mindset and how it's so much different than ours. There's so many things that we don't pick up on because we're so far removed from the culture, and it's really been neat. It's making the Bible as a whole come alive to me. But anyway, again, this is Brian. My blog is spiritualdimension.wordpress.com, and I hope you have enjoyed this. And just pray that you're blessed and that God opens your eyes as you pursue Him and His Word. Good night.